On a Thanksgiving edition, let's be thankful and assume everything goes right. What would that mean for the Utah Jazz? Next on Locked on Jazz.
You are Locked on Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network. Your team every day.
How are you? I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked on Jazz. It's your daily podcast of the Utah Jazz. Give you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. Thank you so much for making Locked on Jazz your first listen, and thank you so much for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. On today's show, we'll do a late game watch if we have time, talk about Lowry all bottled up, but we're going to be super positive and assume every player on the Jazz that's in this developmental run hits on their development and what we've seen out of them, and what do they become as a player, and what does that mean for future moves for the Utah Jazz. If all of them hit, what would it be? It actually gets super complicated along the way. It's kind of an interesting scenario to consider as you look at this season. Thank you for making Locked on Jazz your first listen to the Everydayers. You are the absolute best out there. So thankful for all of you and what you've done for me and this network and been a supportive. It's really great. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. All right, we're going to assume that everybody hits. Now, hits within reason. Here's what's actually interesting about this is at this moment, I would say the Jazz developmental program has hit on Walker Kessler, has hit on Keyonte George. It's really been great. It was again last night. This last 3-game stretch in Keyonte is just so good. We talked about it yesterday, and I asked Will about it in the press conference. And that was truly that, Keyonte, those were Keyonte's 2 best games of the year, those last 2, and then last night he backed it up again. So the Jazz, to some extent, have hit on their 2 developmental pieces. Brice Sensabaugh, we'll see. And then Taylor Hendricks, I think, is still a year behind us being able to make any evaluation until Taylor, until probably 14, 16 months from now, can we talk about Taylor? So it is, to their credit right now, I think Walker has developed and continues to get better. And then obviously the injury was a setback. Keyonte has exceeded expectations this year. I was bullish on Keyonte because I kept hearing everything I was hearing on the show. Incredibly bullish on him all summer long because of what we were hearing. And Chris Jones, his coach, is so good. And Keyonte's commitment was there and everything. But at the same, and there were indicators that the talent and skill were there. At the same time, it's a pretty big jump. So it does, right now when we talk about Cody Williams hitting, and there's some parts about Isaiah Collier hitting, feels like a really, really, really big leap to make that comment. But on the other end, Keyonte George was shooting 39% from the field and 31% from 3 and was a turnover haven and was emotionally not there just, a year ago. And frankly, 9 months ago or 7 months ago. So these things can't happen. So let's walk through it for a second. Walker continues to develop, and he's a starting center in the NBA. Good defensive player. If he shoots the 3 well enough as he did last night, he can be an offensive, or earlier this year, not 80%, but well enough. He's a stretch 4 type, stretch 5 at times, but more importantly, can roll, protect the rim, and play. Like he's a 25 to 30 minute center in the NBA, probably is in the top 15 of centers in the NBA. So you have a upper half center, you have 30 minutes of rim protection, 2 minutes of rim protection every night. And we're not far off on that. Let's stay with Keyonte. Keyonte hits, you have a 20-point a game starting guard who can either be your primary ball handler or your secondary ball handler. Needs to get better in the pick and roll, but in this scenario, everything's hitting. He does become a viable pick and roll player. Walker, who was one of the least good in the league last year on pick and rolls, becomes a viable pick and roll big. And you now have, out of those 2 guys, you have your starting guard and a starting center in your roster. The next one to look at under this scenario, and you have good, and they're good. Like I would say, both of them, best case scenarios, are top 15 player at their position in the NBA. Maybe Key can get up to, I'd have to look at the Locked On top 100. Like, you get the guards start to roll off pretty quickly here if you're not careful. That's the one thing I would say, right? So if you quickly look at the Locked On top 100 and you've got guards, it's hard to primary ball handlers. Shea, Anthony Edwards, Jalen Brunson, Donovan Mitchell, like that's levels I'm not sure I think Key can ever get to. Halliburton, Cade Cunningham, Devin Booker, those are top 7 or 8 guards that you're talking about are pretty elite level. Trae Young, Darius Garland, I think Keyonte, if we're doing best case scenario, is really that he becomes Jamal Murray, who's sitting at 34. So that he's a top 10 guard in the NBA. This is the Thanksgiving edition. Everything's positive. Very hard for me to always do. But he's a Jamal Murray, 34th, 35th best Tyrese Maxey player in the NBA, which according to Locked On Top 100 was in the 30s to 40 in the NBA. And on Walker Kessler, you're dealing with Jared Allen level center, who's top 60 in the NBA and probably, top 10. Jokic, Wembanyama, Anthony Davis, Evan Mobley, Karl Anthony Towns, Jared Jackson Jr., Alfred Sengun, Domantas Sabonis, and now you're into kind of the realm of the next set of guys, Rudy Gobert defensively, Draymond Green defensively, and so you have, I'm going to hold with Walker's a top 15 center, best case scenario, and you have a top 10 player in, I don't know how to get rid of the screen. It's really funny. You have a top 10 player in I have no idea how to get rid of the screen. It's really funny. This is going to be up on the screen all night if I don't. Oh, there we go. So that's our best case scenario. You've got a top 10 guard. You got a top 15 center. And then let's go to Brice Sensabaugh. I'll do a longer dissertation on this at some point in time, but the role of a shooter has changed in the NBA. And so Brice, our best case scenario, becomes a 42, 3, 4, 5% three-point shooter. And that's actually what, to be honest, Brice is going to have to be to survive in the NBA. He's going to have to be, and I'll do more on this later to explain why this is the case, but he is a 45% three-point shooter. So he is a Luke Kennard, Vic Krejci, Sam Merrill, Duncan Robinson, Malik Monk, Cam Spencer. AJ Green's the best shooter in the game today. Those guys are all borderline starter, borderline bench player, depending on the matchups and the time, but a solid rotation player. And that's where Brice, that's if everything hits for Brice, his shooting becomes good. And then Brice has a little more than some of those guys. Because of him being the primary scorer that he was at Ohio State, he has a little bit more of an off-the-bounce drive game, but he's pretty limited in his defense and things of that nature, so he's going to have to make his name as kind of the anti-Tumari Kamara, anti-Herb Jones type player with that great shooting. That's got to be at 44%. Let's say it's Thanksgiving. That clicks in. He's also able to score a little bit off the bounce. I think he's probably, depending on the way your roster, he's either he's a borderline starting shooting guard, bench player, 25 minutes a night, who can shoot it and score it. So now everything's hitting. We have Keyonte, we have Brice, we have Walker. We have to pay Walker. We have to pay Keyonte. And now we have to pay Brice a little bit, like in the Sam Merrill type contract stuff. And now things start to get a little tricky because even though it's Thanksgiving and everything's working perfectly, our roster starts to get full. What happens if all of these guys hit? And we'll continue to talk about that and the trickiness here as we continue on Locked on Jazz. Thanks so much for making Locked on Jazz your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all podcasting apps. It's great to have you. Today's show is brought to you by Murdoch Hyundai, located 4646 South State Street, also in Logan and in Linden. The Murdochs have been in Utah for over 80 years. The Hyundais are incredible. We have purchased a Santa Fe, 2 Santa Fes, an Ioniq 5, an Ioniq 6, and a Genesis for the family. 3 generations worth of purchases there over the years in which I've been a Hyundai spokesperson, and we legitimately love it. Every purchase has been fabulous. We've had no problems. They're great cars. The price point's amazing. The bells and whistles are there. So if you're looking for a car over the holiday season, let's get you in a Hyundai. Let's have you go do it with the Murdochs. Have a no-regrets experience. Email me at dlock09@gmail.com. That's dlock09@gmail.com so that we can get you set up at Murdoch Hyundai with the Locked On VIP experience that you deserve at Murdoch Hyundai. Today's show is also brought to you by Robinhood. Robinhood, the gold standard. Robinhood. Nobody knows your money goals better than you, and Robinhood puts you in control of your money with tools that work as hard as you do, locking in on every opening, beating your PR, beating it again, channel that drive into your money. Robinhood puts you in control of your money. Trade stocks, ETFs, options, futures, and crypto all on one platform. You can now build and execute your own trades from a desktop with Robinhood's Legends advanced tools, or take advantage of new Robinhood strategies with tailored portfolios managed by a team of experts. You expect more for yourself. Expect more from your money. Get started today at Robinhood.com/yourmoney. Again, that's Robinhood.com/yourmoney. Your money, your move. Thanks so much for making Locked on Jazz your first listen of the day. Thank you for making us the #1 sports podcast network. All right, so we've got Brice Sensabaugh as a solid 6th man. We've got Keyonte as a top 10, 15 guard. We got Walker as a top 10 or 15 center in the NBA. And now we get to Taylor Hendricks. And if Taylor Hendricks hits, all goes well. The body comes back. The G League time gets him on the floor. He begins to get a better understanding of the game. His body comes back around. Truly the best case scenario for him is probably an OG Anunoby type player. Defensive stalwart, good enough shooter, no wiggle offensively, never going to be a #1 option, really good complementary player that can defend, knock down shots, bring it. Last year, he averaged 18 a game in New York. That's probably more than I would ever expect. And so you'd have to back that off a little bit from Taylor, but we are going best case scenario here on Thanksgiving. A moderate rebounder, 4 or 5 a game, 2 or 3 assists, a shooter in the sense that he makes his threes at 37, 38%, which is frankly becoming league average, and does a lot of other things defensively. This is your starting 4. And, Taylor is 6'9", 210. OG Anunoby is 6'7", 230. Their bodies are not quite the same. He's just Jaden McDaniels is the one that we talk about the most, but honestly, he doesn't have quite that same body fluidity or form or some of the scoring aspects that Jaden has from leftover from his college. So I would just go a little bit different, but think about him as OG Anunoby type player. I mean, OG led the league in steals one year, was 7th in the defensive player of the year. You want best case scenario. Taylor's being voted for as a potential defense player of the year as a wing player, but OG's a pure complementary player. He impacts the game in a lot of ways. He's really good. This would be a high-end plus for Taylor Hendricks. This is everything's going right. The Jazz have really hit. It's an awesome day in our lives, and we're pretty excited. Everything's going. Really, this is maybe a big jump. On the other end, if you look at OG Anunoby coming off an ACL at Indiana, and maybe not being, I don't really remember his background of whether his basketball acumen was particularly high, but he plays 2 years at 20 minutes a night. He averages 6 and 7 points a game in his first 2 years. It's not until year 3 that he suddenly hits double figures. It's not until year 4 that he really becomes a big-time player. I mean, this is probably what we probably should remember, and we're seeing it firsthand with Keyonte and Walker. Like, we need to wait to year 3 or 4 to decide. So if you look at Taylor, year 1 is 7 points a game and 40 minutes a game at 21. It's very similar to OG Anunoby's rookie year. And then we have this tragic injury that has just kind of wiped the next 2 years off. And it's I think, very difficult to see with what's going to, very interesting to see how this evolves. He's going to, I think, play some G League time, really just get some run and try to get his body back to being right. And he's just got a long way to go. OG was this terror at Indiana, physical marvel. His brother actually played in the NFL, and Taylor has built himself into that same thing. But if you go back and look at the Indiana numbers, he played 2 years at Indiana and only 16 games in that second year because of an ACL. So in some ways similar also to coming back from a pretty tragic injury. And OG Anunoby in his freshman year only played 14 minutes a night and averaged 5 points a game. This comp is probably better than you would think, and let's work with it so that if you have if he becomes OG Anunoby, I think, came in on our locked on list in the 80s, maybe not, maybe he got bumped. He was being talked about at one point, but I think OG Anunoby got bumped out of the top 100. So you have a starting complementary wing player who in Taylor Hendricks, who can play the 4. So now we have Walker as our 5. We have Taylor as our 4. We have Brice coming off the bench. We have Keyonte as our starting point guard. We're now having to pay all these guys at the same time, and this starts to get really tricky. Hopefully we still have Lowry at that point in the process, and we now move to the next tier of guys. If Isaiah Collier hits, what is Isaiah Collier? So to me, Isaiah Collier is a bulldog, 25 minute a night. The jump offense where his pace and tempo changes games. He's super good at getting in the paint. He's finishing at the rim very, very well right now in impressive fashion. And I think the next step from him, if you watch Isaiah, obviously the shooting has to come around. We cannot, this idea that he can play without shooting is not sustainable. Last night it was evident. He's again, let's let him have his second and third years in the league and figure this out. But last night in 21 minutes, he takes 4 shots. Most of them are late, does not take a 3 again. This is going to be a hard way to live. But let's take, again, it's Thanksgiving. Everything's going to work right. So his 3 is going to become viable at like 33%. He is a defensive-minded guard who I think at that point you're hoping he becomes Chris Dunn. So Isaiah Collier on this Thanksgiving edition emerges into an 8th or 9th guy, gets time out of the floor defensively. Gary Payton Jr. would not be a bad comp after watching last night. If he can be like Gary Payton Jr. with left wide open, he makes shots, but Gary Payton Jr. guarded Lowry all night last night. Can that actually, to me, it took a long time for Gary Payton Jr. to kind of get to his spot in the league, and he might have had to find the right team and to play with Steph. But that, I think, is where I would say, or Gary Payton II, Gary Payton Jr. and Gary Payton II are 2 different things. And he's 32 years old and has matured into this after bouncing around the league. I think he's now played on 5 different franchises, 6 years in Golden State, 2 runs in the process. But he might be your comp. He's a 15-minute-a-night player. Isaiah would obviously like a lot more than that, and we're doing it all working, and so I think we'd have Isaiah. But that type of player, TJ McConnell type energy game changer, comes into the game. So now we've got our backup guard. We've got a starting wing in OG Anunoby / Taylor Hendricks. We have Keyonte George as our point guard. Getting exciting here. And we got Taylor Hendricks and Brice Sensabaugh coming off the bench. Kyle Filipowski is another one here. Now, Kyle, in the scenario here where everything comes together, his shooting gets a little bit better. His strength continues. He improves his lateral quickness in the natural developmental process. He did a good amount in this offseason, and he really can shoot it. That's going to be, I think, the quiet thing on Kyle is, can he shoot it? The above the break 3 is going to be important. He's at 34% right now. as a non-defensive player in the NBA, if you are going to be a little bit one-directional or one-sided, you're going to have to shoot 38, 39, 40% from three. So under this case scenario, Kyle is still able to distribute. You're able to use him with fulcrum. He gets a little better defensively. He continues to rebound with strength, and he shoots 38, 39, 40% from three. I think he's still coming off your bench. I'm not sure that with the athletic liability limitations and the lack of length, remember he's 8'11" standing reach, same as Ace Bailey and the same as Taylor Hendricks, that I think that he is able to be much more than a better Kelly Olynyk, a Kelly Olynyk that can play in the playoffs. I don't love the Kelly Olynyk comp because when the playoffs come, Kelly Olynyk goes away. And the hope would be that we could continue to have Kyle Filipowski on the floor for 20 in this thankful version, 25 minutes a night as a really solid third big that, depending on the night, can either go small or play the four. And the weakness that he's not either a 4 or a 5 becomes a strength in this scenario because, again, we're doing the positive scenes on this. And so Kyle hits by making 38, 39, 40% of his threes. He is able to play defensively well enough. He's not nearly as good defensively as a Luke Cornett, but he maybe becomes a little bit of that kind of role player who fits in beautifully on a team, and he's able to pass it in a nice way. He's never going to be Nikola Vucevic, despite my comp of him this summer, because he doesn't have the length. He's really, truthfully, Kyle's a 3. His body's a 3. He's 8'11" standing reach. He's the same as Taylor Hendricks or Ace Bailey. So maybe he's a 4. But he's able to play off the bench, different lineups, and if you have a good enough roster built around him, he can play 25, 30 minutes a night. So there. Now, before we even get to Cody Williams, we've now got Kyle as a backup. We got Isaiah's on that second unit. You're probably playing 5 out, so Isaiah can really drive it maybe with Kyle. And you've got Keyonte as a top 10 guard. You've got Walker as a top 15 center. You've got Taylor's and OG Anunoby, borderline a top 100 player, probably about 115, 120 on the list, and the roster's beginning to form. It's Thanksgiving, and everybody's happy. So where does Cody Williams fit into this? And obviously, Ace Bailey has to become the star. We'll touch on that next, plus a few other notes as we continue on Locked on Jazz. Today's show is brought to you by, I jumped the gun, the excitement. Today's show is brought to you by Drip Drop. Drip Drop, I am not lying. Drip Drop is, I'm using it every day. Drip Drop is my drink. Drip Drop is my additive I put in every single day, and you can now get Drip Drop at 20% off your first order. So I've got Drip Drop from Jack, our nutritionist on the team plane, and I was asking her about it and comparing it to other things, and she had the best line of all about it. She's like, yeah, well, it tastes really, really good. And so our athletes drink it. And the whole point of us having hydration is so that our athletes drink it. Sure, you could probably find something that's saltier and it tastes terrible. And you can find something that's this, but it tastes terrible. And Drip Drop is the perfect combination of things tasting good and giving you the value it's supposed to give. It's 3 times the electrolytes, half the sugar of leading brands, uses science-backed formula trusted by medical professionals, firefighters, and 90% of top college and pro teams. Doctor-developed hydration keeps you running at full power no matter what your day looks like. I'm using Drip Drop, part of my daily routine. It's Drip Drop, creatine, and collagen every day. If you really want to know what keeps this 55-year-old seemingly running, hydration is non-negotiable for me. The family jokes calls me Hydration Boy. That is what we have. Right now, Drip Drop is offering podcast listeners 20% off your first order. So go to dripdrop.com, use the promo code LOCKEDONNBA. Go to dripdrop.com, promo code LOCKEDONNBA for 20% off. Stock up now before the heat hits hard. Keep your body and mind performing at the best with Drip Drop. Today's show is also brought to you by Game Time. Game Time. Basketball season is officially here. Nothing beats being in the arena for these opening games, but let's be real. Getting tickets can be a total headache between waiting in queues, surprise fees, and prices that jump right before checkoff. It's easy to get frustrated when all you want to do is cheer on your team. That's where Game Time comes in, the app that gives your fans the advantage. It's your ultimate life hack for amazing NBA tickets, fast, easy, and stress-free. Love the way you see what you pay. No hidden fees at checkout. Also, the zone deals are a game changer. Pick your section. Game Time picks your seats and save big. You can even find NBA tickets under $25. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. That's code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. All right, continue our Thanksgiving edition. Cody Williams ends up only having to shoot 33% from three and becomes Tamari Kamara, Herb Jones, Chris Dunn. You have to be able to shoot 33 or 34% from three in this league. Lou Dort, Dyson Daniels, Alex Caruso, Jalen Suggs, Dylan Brooks, Josh Hart, Peyton Watson. That's what Cody becomes. Cody becomes an elite defensive on-ball defender who can shoot 33, 34% from three. That's what the defensive stopper is. That's our best case scenario. That's what we believe Cody does. And now we have our defensive stopper. Now this roster is really filling out. But our problem gets to be we have to pay all of them. And then Ace Bailey comes, and Ace Bailey hits. And Ace Bailey becomes our 24, 25-point-a-night star, which if we have Keyonte George as a top 10 guard, and Walker's a top 15 center, and Lauri Markkanen at 32 or 33 years old at that point, but still able to score and shoot with the best of them, we suddenly have a really neat combination of players. So you have Keyonte as a top 10 guard, could score 20 a night. You have Ace Bailey really as your two at 6'9", playing and averaging. He's going to be able to score in this league. I think I saw Ben Anderson tweet that the other night, or maybe wrote an article about it. He's going to score in this league. There's not a lot of doubt there. He's going to score a lot in this league. And then you have Lauri Markkanen, who can score 18, 19, 20 a game, coming off pin downs, also spotting up. Taylor Hendricks plays your OG Anunoby role, and Walker Kessler hits. You've got the core. You don't really need to add anything if all of those hit. And yet you have cap space this season where you can add something. Ace is going to be a big-time contract. Lauri already is there. Keyonte starts to get paid a pretty good-sized number. Walker's in at a pretty good-sized number, and now it gets tight. So Brice, you have to be really diligent in what you pay him as an off-the-bench 8th guy. Cody is an off-the-bench 7th or 8th guy as a bench player. Filipowski is your game changer to play with the length in different manners. But none of those guys can you really roll out big money for, because if it all hits, you're doing the other. That's where this gets really complicated. And this gets tricky on who you're able and how you're able to pay everyone. I haven't written it down all cap-wise, but the key things are what Oklahoma City has done, and what the Jazz, how the Jazz make this work is what you actually do with Brice Sensabaugh, Kyle Filipowski, and those players Cody Williams, who we literally just looked at best case scenario. Honestly, what are they going to become? We have the model. Cody becomes a 33% three-point shooter and a defensive player, and you got to sign him an Aaron Wiggins type deal where Aaron Wiggins got $8 or $9 million a year. And Kyle Filipowski is kind of our not good Jalen Williams, the other Jalen Williams, at $7 million a year. And the minute they're in some other category than that, it's probably not going to work for us. And Brice Sensabaugh probably has to fly into the Isaiah Joe $9, $10 million a year contracts. But then if you have this and they all come together in this Thanksgiving edition best case scenario, you can go sign your Isaiah Hartensteins. You can go sign your Alex Caruso types to fit the exact needs you need as a roster. OG Anunoby has been paid an awful lot of the Taylor Hendricks model. Lou Dort has been paid $18 million. I think that's probably a little bit more of what we're talking about for Taylor Hendricks that we'd like to see. If you're doing this whole payment, OG Anunoby is making $45 million, and it's a problem for the Knicks. So that's where this plays. I don't have didn't get to Walter Clayton, but what is interesting is if Walter Clayton pans out, you have too many guards, and then you have to make a choice. And truthfully, on this, I think if this all starts to come together, you're probably having to make a choice. if Brice and Taylor and Cody all come together, then maybe you decide to do something else other than a luxury like Flip, and you go to a very cheap backup center, and you find another way to play a backup four with Lowry and Ace and Taylor all playing. You can word that, and you decide that Flip it doesn't quite match. But on the other end, probably not the case that all of these guys hit. But it's fun to think about and see how it could play out. And what is really interesting at this point is that Walker Kessler has hit and Keyonte George is on his way. And the fact is the Jazz player development system is actually making it work pretty well for all of these guys. And can they get a few more? All right, we'll get to Lowry being bottled up. We'll get to late game watch. That was fun for Thanksgiving. Have a great day. I probably will not talk to you tomorrow. I will talk to you Friday. This has been Locked on Jazz. Thank you very much. Have a great one. And if you want the story of why I'm in the van, you can email me and I'll tell you the story. Yes, if those of you who are listening on audio, you can't tell I'm in the van for the video version of the show. And it's kind of a funny story. So if you really want it, I can tell it. That is Locked on Jazz. Have a great one. It is, we now say the first ever national 24/7 channel, Locked on NBA. We also tell you to check out Game Night. Every game, every night on Locked on NBA.